So as the title suggests, today I want to talk about shooting without a clicker and how this can help you in your normal shooting as well. So the thing is with the clicker that I'm sure at some point when you started archery, someone said, you need to start using a clicker, you need to transition onto using a clicker to make sure you draw the arrow back the same amount every time. And it's a piece of equipment that literally every single top archer uses. So undoubtedly, you need to use one. But there are some key mistakes that people often make with the clicker that can cause a lot of difficulty. So in the video today, I want to basically go through some key mistakes to avoid and show you how you can use shooting without the clicker to improve your shooting with the clicker. So that's the key thing that I want to look at today. So while we're on the subject of clickers, I'd love to know, drop me a comment down below which type of clicker you use and which thickness as well. So I'm on the biter clicker here, as you can see there, and I'm shooting the 0.3 thickness here, which basically just means it's a little bit stiffer, a little bit of a louder noise. I'd love to know, drop me a comment down below. I'd be fascinated to see which types you prefer, carbon or metal, and let me know with that. So the thing with the clicker is, what if you have just started using a clicker, or maybe you've been using it for a couple of years, what if it's in the wrong position? By putting the clicker on the bow and incorporating it in your shot sequence, you've given your brain the task of getting through the clicker. So your brain will do whatever is necessary to do that. If your clicker is too far back, your brain will find a way to pull the arrow through the clicker. You've given it that task, so it will find a way, even if the method is not the best. It's exactly the same as like when I make one of these videos, I always have to find a way to ask you to hit that like button there. Thanks. And that way I can make sure whatever the method is, I'll always have that as the task. Same thing with the clicker. You have to make sure that the clicker is in the right place so that you can then do the right technique and the right expansion. Very commonly, if the clicker is too far in and it makes you overdraw, you might see someone get to full draw here, they're in a good position, then they have to pull through much more to get through the clicker, and they'll end up doing this. And they're just creating length there because they have to get through the clicker before they shoot, but they're doing it in the wrong way. So what we can do is actually shoot without the clicker to help us here. So before we get to the next part, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for notifications so you never miss a video when I post one. I do everything about recurve archery here, so equipment, technique, mental, all those areas. Make sure you hit that. And now we'll get to the next bit. So the general gist of this is you want to shoot without the clicker and use that to tell yourself where your draw length needs to be, because you haven't got any constraint. You haven't told your brain to get through the clicker. So that's the general gist. Then when you go to shoot with your clicker, it will help you set where that length needs to be. So that's the general gist of it. If you've kind of understood enough here, then pretty much you can leave the video now. That's pretty much it in terms of what we're actually going to do. But for some more specifics on how to do this, keep watching and I'll show you kind of the proper method of when you do this, how often to do it, that kind of stuff. So the key thing here is, just as it sounds like, you basically do everything as normal in your shot routine. You put the arrow in the bow, just not under the clicker. You draw up, you come to your anchor position, you move your elbow around, you get to real full draw, you do your expansion, but all without the clicker. And what you need to do is, I would recommend starting this at close blank boss. Do it very close first of all, no target face. And the key point here is you must go through every single step of your shot routine. Just because you're not using the clicker, it doesn't mean that you come to anchor here, just kind of like hold here, don't move your elbow and then just release like this. It doesn't mean that you do a different shot now. It means that you go through the process, you come up, you come in, you come to anchor, you move the elbow around, you reach a real full draw, you expand, you still have an expansion point of the shot, you're still aiming obviously, and then you shoot. The first few shots of this will feel horrible, feel very weird, but the point here is that you are able to really prioritize other areas of your technique. So in the example I gave before, if your clicker is too far back and you're struggling to get through the clicker, what will often happen is someone will, even maybe in the setup, they might know from previous shots that it's difficult to get through the clicker. So they might do this, they might lean back with the body, and then that means they've kind of lost their posture. So when you shoot without the clicker, you can prioritize the technique really, really well. So you can say, okay, I'm really going to keep the posture, come up, really keep the elbow direction moving round, really keep my anchor. Then when I come in to expand, I'm going to expand right around with this elbow, but I'm not going to allow the body to do this. I'm not going to allow a big movement here. So you can prioritize that. And what you'll find is you're much more able to get a consistent shot routine with certain points in there, and you can always make sure you're doing those points because you haven't got the constraint of the clicker. So after you've done that for a while, you've built up a bit of a routine. Again, like I said, you do this without the clicker for a while, close blank boss. You can even do this with your eyes closed at close blank boss as well. You're not looking where the arrow is under the clicker, you're not looking if your draw length's changed a lot. That's not the point yet. Now, once you've got comfortable with it, you can then maybe put a camera onto the side of your bow, like this here, and then see where the arrow is coming to. Is it much more further back than normal? Is it much further forward than normal? This can tell you that maybe your clicker was in the wrong place and you were kind of sacrificing your technique to basically mold yourself to where the clicker is. So that's what you do that. Then you start shooting with the clicker again and see what the difference in feeling is. If you notice when you start shooting with the clicker again that you're doing that, then that's obviously telling you that the clicker is too far back. Conversely, if you feel like you do the same technique and it clicks very early, so you do the same technique and it clicks here, then maybe you need to move your clicker back because you were compromising your technique before just to meet where the clicker is. You might think this is unlikely, but many people do it, especially if you know the clicker is going to click early. You'll probably do something in your body as well to make sure it doesn't click early. Classic example for me is if I shoot a FITA, a 14-40 round, when I go 90, 70, 50, 30, as I go closer, if I don't move the clicker slightly, because my 70 meter position is slightly different than my 30 meter, if I don't move it for 30 meters, I will find that the clicker will click early, and my body quickly adapts to this and it knows it's going to happen. So subconsciously I would just clap slightly on the bow shoulder, because when I'm coming up strong, I know it's going to click early. So my body thinks, okay, I'll just come off a little bit here because I don't want it to click early. That's uncomfortable. It's not what I want. So I'll come off a bit here, and before you know it, alignment's terrible, expansion's not good, and I'm wondering why, the group's very wide and I'm not shooting very well. Very common thing. So it's really important to be on top of where the clicker needs to be. So another thing you can do here, which is really good, is to analyze your expansion. I've done a whole another video on this, so I'll put the link to that above on the card. Basically, if you look at your expansion, it can tell you whether you're overdrawing or underdrawing. Typically, like I said, if you're doing this, you're probably overdrawing. If when you're coming up from setup to anchor here, if you can see some folding here, probably means you're underdrawing. So you can use this to maybe let yourself know whether the clicker is in the right place or not. So have a look at that video that I linked above there to see more about the expansion. But now there's some other things as well that you can check when you're doing this drill without the clicker. So on this note, with this clicker movement, shooting without the clicker, it's very important to think of a couple of things, bear them in mind. Your alignment will obviously change your draw length and will drastically change where your clicker needs to be. So if, for example, you have normally your bow shoulder is set in like this and also your elbow is out, that means your draw length is going to be, I don't know, say 27 inches. If you are working on bringing your elbow around here, that will increase your draw length. But if on some shots you don't do that, so maybe some shots you come around on the back and you increase your draw length, then you have a good amount, then your expansion is good. If some shots you don't bring this elbow round enough, then that means you're going to get to your full draw here and your draw length is going to be too short and you're going to have to do that, and your expansion is going to be compromised to get to the clicker. However, long term, when you do the correct thing, you will probably increase your draw length a lot. You will get the bow shoulder into line more here, you'll get this side into line more here, and your draw length will be massively further back. But if you just put your clicker there to start, you won't be able to do that. And so you'll end up being compromised in alignment and then just also compromised in expansion. So take it in stages and don't be afraid to set your clicker where it is on the certain day. So some days you know your alignment might be a little bit better, sometimes it might be a little bit worse, sometimes you might be more tired. Don't be afraid to move your clicker. If this is one takeaway from the video, this is what I'd say, is just don't be afraid to move the clicker. So many people put the clicker there and then just keep it there for months, say because you know I shouldn't need to move it, shouldn't change, that kind of thing. Top archers are not afraid to move the clicker. If they feel they need to, they are confident enough in their shot sequence that they will move the clicker to them. They don't move themselves to the clicker. So that's a really key point. That goes the same for blank boss to distance. If I'm shooting blank boss, I'll move my clicker in, maybe 2-3 millimeters compared to 70 meters. So don't be afraid to move it, it's very important. If you always prioritize the feeling of your shot sequence and the steps and making sure you're doing every part, then you will have the confidence to say, my clicker's in the wrong place. You know, I can't do my expansion properly. I don't feel like I'm at the proper place in, you know, when I get to full draw. So you only get that if you're really focused on the technique and not just compromising yourself and putting yourself in this mold of where the clicker needs to be. You don't want to do that. So finally, to finish off, I would say another thing that you can do is definitely shoot without the clicker regularly. As a minimum, I'd say shoot without it once a week. Even if you're, you know, an advanced archer, just because you've got a clicker on your bow doesn't mean you always have to use it. And it doesn't mean you can't learn other things by shooting without it. So this is a bit of a misconception really. Once you put the clicker on your bow, you don't always have to use it for every single shot. I definitely recommend shooting minimum once a week, maybe sometimes even once per day, just a couple of arrows each day, just to make sure, am I actually doing my shot routine? Is my clicker serving me, or am I being a slave to the clicker? Really important to do this. Once you start getting more comfortable with it, shoot some rounds, scored, you know, rounds at a target face without the clicker. It will be really interesting for you to see, okay, can I maintain my aiming? Can I maintain my expansion? Can I maintain this? You'll find it very, very interesting. So I can't stress that enough. It'd be really, really good if you try that once or twice a week, and you'll find that it's much easier to set where you need your clicker and get a consistent expansion and all these parts of your shot that are really, really important. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you found that useful. If you haven't checked out my website already, onlinearcheryacademy.com, definitely check that out. There's loads of detail on everything you could ever need to know about recurve archery, so check that out. There's loads about the expansion, about setting your clicker length. There's blog posts about making grips, about fletching, all these kind of things. Check that out if you haven't already. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.